In a whirlwind of political developments on May 9, 2025, former President Donald Trump has once again made headlines with his bold statements regarding taxation and tariffs, stirring debate among Republicans and raising questions about the future of U.S. China trade relations. With a series of announcements made via social media and in an array of press briefings, Trump has positioned himself at the center of ongoing negotiations and political maneuvering. In a noteworthy moment, Trump warned that any proposed tax hike on wealthy Americans could lead to political fallout for Republicans. The problem with even a tiny tax increase for the rich, which I and all others would graciously accept in order to help the lower and middle-income workers, is that the radical left Democrat lunatics would go around screaming, "Read my lips," he stated on Truth Social. Referencing the infamous pledge by former President George H.W. Bush. This comment underscores Trump's complex relationship with tax policy as he seeks to balance support for tax cuts with a willingness to compromise for broader economic assistance. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt later affirmed Trump's preference for large tax cuts while noting his personal openness to a slight increase to assist the working class. As discussions continue in Congress, the implications of Trump's statements could reverberate throughout the Republican Party, especially as members grapple with their identity and strategy leading up to the upcoming elections. Trump's remarks suggest that he may be navigating a delicate path, trying to maintain party unity while addressing the needs of constituents who may benefit from increased support. On the international front, Trump hinted at a significant reduction in tariffs on Chinese imports, signaling a possible shift in policy as trade talks loom. He stated that lowering the current 145% tariff to 80% seems right, leaving the final decision to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who are set to meet with Chinese officials in Switzerland. This potential tariff reduction comes as the U.S. government seeks to stabilize its trade relationships and reduce economic tensions that have characterized recent years. The former president also announced a new appointment, naming Fox News host Jeanine Pirro as the interim U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. This decision has drawn attention not only for Pirro's media presence but also for the implications it may have on the administration's judicial agenda. Trump praised her qualifications, emphasizing her legal background, which aligns with his administration's focus on appointing candidates who reflect conservative values. As Trump navigates these complex political waters, he is also facing scrutiny over his administration's decision to fire several Democratic commissioners from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. This move has sparked a backlash, with the terminated commissioners claiming the firings were illegal and vowing to contest their dismissals. In a broader context, Trump's actions and statements are likely to shape the political landscape as the 2026 elections approach. The dynamics within the Republican Party, particularly concerning tax policy and trade relations with China, will be critical as candidates position themselves for the electorate. As Trump continues to assert influence over party direction and public opinion, observers will be watching closely to see how these developments unfold in the coming weeks. In conclusion, Trump's recent declarations on taxation and tariffs highlight a pivotal moment in U.S. politics with significant implications for both domestic policy and international relations. As tensions rise and negotiations proceed, the outcomes could redefine not just the Republican Party's platform but also the administration's approach to key economic challenges ahead. The interplay between Trump's ambitions and the realities of governance will undoubtedly continue to captivate and challenge both supporters and critics alike. In a dramatic turn of events, President Donald Trump has suggested a significant reduction of tariffs on Chinese goods, proposing a cut to 80% as U.S. and Chinese officials gear up for their first high-level trade talks since the trade war escalated in April. This announcement comes amid growing pressure to alleviate the economic strain caused by the ongoing tariff conflict, which has seen U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports soar to 145%, while China has retaliated with its own hefty levies. On Friday morning, Trump shared his thoughts on the social media platform Truth Social, stating, "80% tariff on China seems right. Up to Scott B." This remark referenced Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who was set to lead discussions with his Chinese counterparts this weekend in Switzerland. The president emphasized the need for China to open its market to American goods, asserting that closed markets don't work anymore. Despite the optimism surrounding Trump's tariff proposal, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt later downplayed the president's comments, clarifying that no unilateral tariff reductions would occur without concessions from China. That was a number the president threw out there, she noted, reiterating Trump's commitment to a negotiations-first approach. The mixed messaging has raised eyebrows, especially given the urgency of the upcoming discussions. The backdrop to these negotiations is a rapidly deteriorating trade landscape that threatens to inflict lasting damage on both economies. Analysts have warned that the continued escalation of tariffs could catalyze a broader economic downturn affecting U.S. businesses and consumers alike. The Federal Reserve's recent decision to hold interest rates steady reflects concerns about the potential economic fallout from the trade war, with Chair Jerome Powell stating that the tariff shock hasn't hit yet. In the lead-up to the talks, optimism has emerged from other trade negotiations, particularly the recently announced trade deal between the U.S. and the United Kingdom. This deal is seen as a potential template for future agreements, with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggesting it could pave the way for a series of similar pacts. Trump touted the agreement as a fantastic historic day, highlighting increased market access for American agricultural products. However, the landscape is not without challenges. The European Union has unveiled a list of U.S. goods valued at over $100 billion that could be targeted with retaliatory tariffs if trade negotiations do not yield satisfactory results. This response underscores the delicate nature of international trade relations as nations navigate the complexities introduced by U.S. tariff policies. As the negotiations unfold, the scale of potential tariff reductions remains uncertain. Reports indicate that the Trump administration is considering slashing tariffs to as low as 50% as a starting point for negotiations contingent on reciprocal actions from China. However, any agreement will likely be fraught with complications, as China has compiled a list of U.S. goods exempt from its own tariffs, signaling a cautious approach to de-escalation. With U.S. officials preparing for critical discussions this weekend. The outcomes are crucial not only for bilateral relations but also for global economic stability. Investors are watching closely as market sentiment fluctuates with the evolving trade narrative. As Trump himself noted, this is just the beginning, hinting at a series of upcoming trade agreements that could reshape the landscape of international commerce. In conclusion, the upcoming trade talks represent a pivotal moment for U.S.-China relations, with the potential for significant shifts in tariff policy that could redefine the global economic framework. The world awaits the results of these negotiations, as they hold the key to either a de-escalation of tensions or further entrenchment in a costly trade war. As markets respond to the unfolding developments, the broader implications for trade dynamics and economic health remain to be seen. In a recent series of announcements and statements, President Donald Trump has stirred significant political discourse affecting his party and the broader economic landscape. As discussions around tax policy evolve, Trump has indicated a surprising openness to the possibility of increasing taxes on the wealthy to support a proposed tax and spending cuts package. This move, however, has sparked concerns among Republican lawmakers who fear the potential backlash from their base. On May 9, 2025, Trump took to Truth Social to express his reservations about a tax hike, stating that while he personally would not oppose a modest increase to aid lower and middle-class Americans, he cautioned that such a move could be politically detrimental. The problem with even a tiny tax increase for the rich is that the radical left Democrat lunatics would go around screaming, "Read my lips," he wrote, referencing George H.W. Bush's infamous pledge on taxes that contributed to his electoral downfall. Trump's mixed messages on tax policy highlight the tensions within the GOP, as many members remain staunchly opposed to any tax increases. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt elaborated on Trump's stance during a press briefing, emphasizing the president's desire to extend the historic tax cuts implemented in 2017. Leavitt characterized Trump's willingness to accept a slight tax increase as an honorable position, indicating the ongoing negotiations in Congress might lead to a compromise that aligns with Trump's broader fiscal strategy. In tandem with tax discussions, Trump has signaled a potential shift in trade policy regarding tariffs on China. In another Truth Social post, he suggested that reducing the current 145% tariff on Chinese goods to 80% seems right, contingent upon Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's recommendations. This statement precedes critical trade talks scheduled in Switzerland, where U.S. officials will meet with their Chinese counterparts. Trump's fluctuating position on tariffs reflects a broader strategy to navigate complex international trade relationships while attempting to bolster his domestic agenda. These political maneuvers come amid notable appointments and firings within the Trump administration. Trump recently appointed Fox News host Jeanine Pirro as the interim U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., a move that appears to align with his strategy of placing loyalists in key positions. Additionally, the president's decision to fire acting FEMA Administrator Cameron Hamilton has drawn criticism, particularly as the hurricane season approaches. Congressman Benny Thompson has urged Trump to prioritize appointing a qualified FEMA head, arguing that the administration's management of disaster preparedness is crucial given the impending risks. As political and economic narratives unfold, Trump's approach continues to provoke reactions from both allies and adversaries. The implications of his tax and trade policies could have profound effects on the upcoming elections and the GOP's long-term strategy. With the midterms looming and potential challengers emerging, how Trump navigates these complex issues will be pivotal not only for his party's cohesion but for his own political future. Looking ahead, the dynamics of tax reform, trade policy, and administrative appointments will undoubtedly shape the political landscape as the country moves closer to the 2026 elections. Observers will be keen to see how Trump reconciles his populist impulses with the realities of governing and the expectations of his party's base. As the global trade landscape continues to evolve under President Trump's administration, recent developments suggest a potential shift that could reshape U.S. China relations and the global economy. Following months of escalating tensions characterized by hefty tariffs, the Trump administration is contemplating significant reductions on tariffs imposed on Chinese goods. This comes as part of broader trade negotiations set to commence this weekend in Switzerland, where Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will meet with Chinese officials. In a surprising turn, Trump hinted at slashing the current 145% tariff on Chinese imports to as low as 80%, a move that could signal a willingness to de-escalate a trade war that has had far-reaching implications for both economies. 80% tariff on China seems right. Up to Scott B. Trump posted on Truth Social referring to Bessent. Such a reduction, while still significant, could pave the way for reciprocal concessions from China, which has imposed similarly high tariffs on U.S. goods. The motivation behind this proposed tariff cut stems from the urgent need to alleviate the economic strain that the ongoing trade war has inflicted on American consumers and businesses. Recent reports indicate that the Federal Reserve is closely monitoring the situation, with Chair Jerome Powell stating that while the economic shock from tariffs has not yet fully materialized, it remains a looming concern. The uncertainty surrounding trade policies has already begun to impact investor sentiment, with U.S. stocks showing signs of optimism following Trump's announcements about potential trade deals. Moreover, the Trump administration's recent trade agreement with the United Kingdom has further fueled hopes for more robust trade relations. The deal, touted as a breakthrough by Trump, is expected to enhance market access for American agricultural products, including beef and ethanol. This agreement represents the first significant trade pact of Trump's presidency following a series of tariffs imposed globally earlier this year, which he characterized as reciprocal measures. As discussions progress, the White House has emphasized that any reductions in tariffs on China will be contingent on concessions from Beijing. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt reiterated the president still remains with his position that he is not going to unilaterally bring down tariffs on China. This stance underscores the administration's strategic approach to leverage negotiations while ensuring that the U.S. retains its bargaining power. On the ground, the ripple effects of these tariff policies are palpable. U.S. exporters are preparing for adjustments as trade dynamics shift. For example, Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company TSMC recently reported a surge in sales attributed to a rush in orders from companies anticipating higher tariffs. Such fluctuations illustrate the complexities and challenges that businesses face amid an unpredictable trade environment. As the world awaits the outcomes of this weekend's negotiations, the stakes are high. The potential for lowered tariffs could not only ease tensions between the U.S. and China but also stabilize the global economy, which has been teetering under the weight of trade disputes. However, the road ahead is fraught with uncertainty as both sides prepare to navigate a landscape shaped by competing economic interests and geopolitical considerations. In conclusion, as the U.S. moves toward potential tariff reductions and new trade agreements, the implications for global trade will be significant. Both the administration's approach and the responses from trading partners will dictate the future of these negotiations. With many deals reportedly in the hopper, the coming weeks could define the trajectory of U.S. trade policy and its impact on the global economy for years to come. In a significant shift within the Pentagon's information technology landscape, the recent fallout from the Signalgate incident has prompted crucial changes in how sensitive communications are managed at the Department of Defense (DoD). As cybersecurity concerns loom larger than ever, Katie Arrington, the acting Chief Information Officer (CIO) of the Pentagon, has announced a renewed focus on enhancing secure communication platforms for military leaders and government officials. This strategic pivot follows revelations that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared classified military plans via an unclassified messaging app, raising alarms about the safety of operational discussions. During a House Armed Services Subcommittee hearing on May 8, 2025, Arrington emphasized the urgency of adapting communication methods in light of recent security breaches. This is something that, when they say incidents happen, it innovates us and urges us to make the requirement and make the devices and make the technology available, Arrington said, underscoring the DoD's commitment to evolving its technological capabilities. The incident involving Hegseth, who was reported to have shared high-stakes military information on the encrypted app Signal, has drawn significant criticism from cybersecurity advocates, former military officials, and lawmakers, all of whom have expressed concerns about potential risks to service members' safety. The implications of Hegseth's actions are profound, prompting an investigation by the Pentagon Inspector General to determine whether DoD policies regarding the sharing of classified information were followed. Arrington noted that the traditional methods of secure communication, which typically require in-person discussions in sensitive compartmented information facilities (SIFs), are no longer sufficient in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. The way we have traditionally communicated is going into a SCIF, and we're evolving. The technology is evolving, she stated, highlighting the need for real-time secure communication solutions. As part of this modernization effort, Arrington outlined her office's priority to establish a secure platform for senior government leaders, members of Congress, and international allies to communicate effectively and securely. A significant initiative involves creating a mission partner environment that will facilitate secure information exchanges at various classification levels. It's a forcing function. It is something that is a priority for our office to make sure that we have that in rapid time, Arrington explained, indicating the urgency of these developments. In the wake of these security challenges, the Pentagon has also seen leadership changes, with President Trump recently nominating Kirsten Davies to serve as the next CIO. Until Davies assumes her role, Arrington continues to navigate the dual responsibilities of acting CIO and Chief Information Security Officer, a position she has held since her tenure began under the Trump administration. As the Pentagon works to bolster its cybersecurity measures amid ongoing scrutiny, the path forward will likely involve a delicate balance between embracing new technologies and ensuring the secure transmission of sensitive information. With Arrington at the helm of these efforts, the DoD is poised to make significant strides in enhancing its communication infrastructure, setting the stage for a more secure operational environment. As these initiatives unfold, the effectiveness of the Pentagon's response to the Signalgate incident will undoubtedly influence future standards and practices in military communications, shaping the landscape of defense technology for years to come. In recent weeks, the landscape of U.S. foreign policy has become increasingly complex, marked by significant developments that reflect both the ambitions and anxieties of the Trump administration. As President Trump seeks to redefine America's role on the global stage, the reactions from various factions, both domestic and international, highlight the precarious balance of diplomacy, trade, and humanitarian concerns. One of the most pressing issues has emerged from the ongoing conflict in Gaza, where aid organizations have raised alarms over a U.S.-backed plan aimed at resuming limited humanitarian assistance. Critics argue that this approach, while ostensibly supportive, is fraught with risks of enabling further conflict. Under strict Israeli rules, we fear this plan could inadvertently facilitate war crimes, warned a representative from one of the humanitarian groups. This sentiment underscores the challenges the U.S. faces in navigating its support for Israel alongside its commitments to human rights in conflict zones. Simultaneously, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has made headlines with his declaration regarding the India-Pakistan conflict, stating, "None of our business." This hands-off approach signals a shift in U.S. involvement in regional disputes. As the administration focuses on de-escalation rather than direct intervention, experts caution that such non-involvement could embolden both nations, particularly given their nuclear capabilities. Amidst these geopolitical tensions, President Trump has also touted a newly finalized trade deal with the United Kingdom, which he claims will generate $11 billion in economic benefits. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick described the agreement as a template for future negotiations, emphasizing tailored provisions for specific industries. "This is Donald Trump at his best, creating opportunity through strategic negotiations," Lutnick stated. The deal promises $5 billion in export opportunities and $6 billion in tariff revenue, showcasing the administration's focus on securing favorable terms while reducing reliance on Chinese markets. However, as Trump navigates these trade discussions, his administration's approach has drawn scrutiny. Critics argue that Trump's madman diplomacy could backfire, creating instability rather than fostering cooperation. While some analysts believe that unpredictability may deter adversaries, others warn that it risks alienating allies and complicating international relations. In the midst of these developments, U.S. humanitarian aid policies have come under fire, particularly after reports emerged that food rations for 1 million refugees in Uganda were halted due to the administration's aid cuts. This decision has sparked outrage among international aid agencies, who argue such measures undermine America's moral standing and have dire consequences for vulnerable populations. As the U.S. grapples with these multifaceted challenges, the implications of its foreign policy decisions are profound. The administration's trade strategies may bolster the economy in the short term, but the long-term effects on international relations and humanitarian efforts remain uncertain. With the world watching closely, the question arises: can America strike a balance between promoting its interests and upholding its values? The future of U.S. foreign policy will likely hinge on how effectively the Trump administration can manage these competing demands both at home and abroad. As negotiations unfold and new crises arise, the path forward will require deft diplomacy and a renewed commitment to global responsibility.